Hey everyone, so welcome back to my channel, okay, where I usually dive into real talks about careers, education, and life choices in Ghana. I'm Isaac Knowles, a national final year Bachelor of Science in Information Technology Management student. So today we are tackling a very hot topic titled Why You Shouldn't Pursue Bachelor of Science in General Nursing. So this video is not actually meant to degrade general nursing in any way, but I'm going to tell you about the reason why you should actually not think of doing general nursing in Ghana. And the reasons would actually shock you if you watch to the end or if you follow this video to the end. Now, don't get me wrong here. Nursing is actually a noble profession and nurses are heroes. But based on facts, reports, and real experiences, there are some serious red flags that could make this part more of a nightmare than a dream. This video is going to be some minutes long. I can't tell the number of minutes. So let's break it down. I'll cover the top reasons backed by data and end with some thoughts on alternatives. So first of all, let's set a steam rolling. Or let's keep the ball rolling. So Ghana produces thousands of nurses every year. But the system is actually strained. According to recent statistics, we are losing nurses faster than we can train them. And the education itself has major gaps. So the number one reason I would discourage you from doing a Bachelor of Science in General Nursing is the quality of nursing education in Ghana. There is an inadequacy when it comes to the quality. And also, because of the quality of education, which is inadequate, sometimes it leaves nursing graduates unprepared for real-world challenges. That is actually the truth. And I'm not coming to that the education system is bad, but it's just not adequate enough. So think about it. Nursing is hands-on, right? But studies show that there is a huge gap between theory and practice in the Ghanaian programs. Clinical education is weak, with poor student-less relationships, okay? Lack of collaboration between schools and hospitals, and also outdated curriculum or curricula does not prepare you for modern healthcare. Overcrowded classes, insufficient faculty, and limited resources means that you're not going to get the right skills you need, or you may probably not get adequate skills that you need to become a successful nurse. And there's even one report that highlights or which shows that this leads to incompetent graduates who struggle in clinical settings, contributing to declining nurse quality. Imagine spending 4 years and tons of money only to feel lost on your first shift. That's not empowering. It's actually very frustrating. So let's move on to the reason number two. And I would say the reason number two would be the financial burden. It's quite a massive one, and the return on investment is actually questionable at best. Studying Bachelor of Science in General Nursing isn't actually cheap, okay? In fact, any health-related degree or health sciences degree is not actually cheap. We are looking at tuition, books, uniforms, and clinical placement, which adds up quickly to the cost. And after graduation, tens of thousands of nurses are unemployed or waiting for postings. The government admits that there is actually a surplus, but hospitals are understaffed because of poor distribution. You are looking at months or years without a job, and you're going to rack up debts, especially if you took loans from the student loan trust fund to fund your education. Okay. And renewing licenses yearly also costs a lot of money. And recent figures show that over 48,000 unemployed nurses are existent in Ghana right now, with the batches actually from 2021 to 2023 still waiting. Why sink into that when other fields might offer quicker stability? And even the figures that I'm quoting in terms of the 48,000 may even be more than that. It can be more than that, okay? But that is what I currently know when it comes to nursing. And let's move on to reason three. Once you do get a job, the working conditions for general nursing in Ghana is actually a brutal one. So why am I saying that? Ghanaian nurses actually face chronic understaffing, which leads to overwork and burnout. One nurse I know actually described it as a time bomb. Okay, so Ghana has a population of about 35 million people, and the nurse-patient ratios is actually not encouraging at all. Due to this, when you become a general nurse, you're actually going to get burnt out so fast, and there are limited resources, inadequate equipment, and poor infrastructure, which means that you are going to be improvising daily, which is more stressful and very risky. Added to that is low morale from delayed salaries and lack of support. And it's no wonder nurses are quitting or migrating. A study links high burnouts directly to intentions to leave the profession. Do you really want a career where exhaustion is the daily norm? I mean, life is not easy actually. Life is not easy. Life actually hard, but When hardship becomes a daily norm with respect to your profession, it becomes a huge problem, and it can have long-term consequences or long-term effects on even the health of you, the health worker yourself. So let's move on to number 4. Speaking of migration, okay. Brain drain is real, and it exposes how unappealing nursing is in Ghana. Thousands of nurses leave every year for better opportunities abroad. So in 2024, there was a video circulating of a nurse complaining about poor working conditions and poor opportunities here. Some couldn't even get jobs, so they had to move to the UK. I think Udimaya captured a video like that when he was traveling and he met some nurses who were leaving to the UK. So over 6,000 nurses in 2024 alone left Ghana to seek for better opportunities in abroad in countries like Australia, UK, US, and others. And with that, we have low wages. Okay, so nurses actually, the pay is decent. When you look at the pay, it's actually decent. However, when you look at the level of stress that nurses have to go through and the kind of pay they are receiving, there is actually a mismatch. Okay, when sometimes they tend to experience unpaid salaries and worsening condition of services, which actually pushes them out. In the US or the UK, you could earn 7 times more than what you're actually earning in Ghana. But here's the catch: if you study in Ghana, your training might not be globally competitive. Okay, so programs produce narrowly trained pros who struggle intentionally, or internationally. Like, when you look at midwives and nurses, they can't actually migrate, or migrate is actually difficult because when you get there, your certification is very difficult to recognize, or it's very difficult for them to trust you with your level of certification, especially because of how our degrees are structured. Okay, so you'll be stuck unless you are retrained abroad. Hence, your degree in Ghana becomes quote unquote useless. And let's move on to the reason 5. So with the reason 5, I would say that stigmatization and lack of recognition is another major reason why I'm going to discourage people from actually doing this, or why I'm going to advise people not to think of pursuing this. So nursing in Ghana actually is stressful, as I said. So nurses deal with poor attitudes from staff, patients, and even family. So this could be seen during the COVID-19 era, which occurred in 2020, I believe. Frontline nurses actually face stigma, and they had inadequate training and logistical nightmares. Female nurses who dominate the field juggle demanding programs with personal challenges like family duties, which led to high level of stress. And the career advancements is actually limited, right? And there's poor remuneration, I would say. And there's little to no funding for further studies. Okay, there's actually little to no funding for further studies. And workplace safety issues becomes another thing because nurses are the first point of contact when patients are actually not feeling well, or they've been exposed to a particular kind of disease. So it tends to be more dangerous for them because they can easily get such infectious disease from patients, even without having to necessarily have close contact with the patient. Some diseases are actually airborne. So yeah, they're exposed to so many potential disease. One alliance notes that Ghana doesn't invest enough in nurses, and which is pretty sad. So they actually feel like they're not really contributing their quota to national development since the government doesn't actually fund them enough. Let's move on to reason 6, which is the clinical learning environment is a mess. Okay, so students report poor supervision, lack of equipment, and frequent shifts that disrupt learning. In rural areas, it's actually worse. There's actually workforce shortages, burnout, and no technology access. Newly hired nurses describe the job as stressful and unpredictable, far from what they actually expected. So why start a career feeling defeated from day one? When you look at it, you're actually going to be discouraged. And my final reason, which is reason number 7, is policy failures and a high level of strikes. Okay, so nurses in Ghana actually strike over poor conditions, unpaid allowances, and neglect. Like a 2025 strike that left patients stranded. Okay, even some patients lost their lives. Yeah. They were recorded deaths because of the kind of strike that the nurses embarked on. The government trains more nurses, but they cannot absorb them, which leads to frustration. It's a cycle of breaking promises with no real fix in sight. Currently, I believe that some number of nurses, I don't know the actual number, but some have been moved or some have been migrated to, is it Antigua and Barbados? Yeah, to pave way for the ones that are yet to work in the best effort. So in some way, studying Bachelor of Science in General Nursing in Ghana means facing subpar education or low quality of education, and also going to face a huge financial strain, burnouts, and also you might be tempted to migrate. And there's stigma, poor environment, and poor policy when it comes to the health work. It's not that nursing isn't a good program to study, just that the system here makes it quite tough. If you are passionate, consider studying abroad, or consider studying in fields like public health, pharmacy, or tech. When I talk about tech, either computer science, information science, computer engineering, information technology, and you're okay, it's better. So what do you think? I mean, drop comment below. Have you experienced this? Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more career advice. Thanks very much for watching. Choose wisely when it comes to your degree of choice in Ghana. My name is Isaac Nelson. As I said, I'm a final year Bachelor of Science in Information Technology Management. Some peace. Unless I'll see you another time, and have a good one.